The only thing I can think of happened years ago. This was back when it was okay to build permanent tree stands. I'd scouted out a new area and settled on an area where an oak flat joined a big thick swamp. It was pretty open except for one grove of head-high palmetto bushes that came from behind my stand and went into the swamp. I was able to climb into a fork of an oak tree by climbing a small dogwood next to it. After hoisting up my wood and nailing up the very stable platform and seat, about 15 to 20 foot up, I dumped out some corn and left. This was summer, as I was hog hunting. It was 2 weeks before I made it back to hunt. Everything was fine as I walked in before daylight and got settled in. I noticed the corn was gone and lots of fresh hog signs could be seen by my small lights. After everything got quietened back down, as I sat in the dark, I kept having that feeling of being watched. Now I've hunted, camped, and grew up in the woods, and I'm completely at home day or night in it. Even the darkest, deepest swamps, I never felt this feeling. I wasn't scared, I didn't know to be. I just couldn't put my finger on it. The feeling never changed. I couldn't get used to it. I was just on edge, I guess. Never heard or saw any animals that morning. All I can remember is I was climbing down about mid-morning. I had lowered my rifle and was in the process of slithering from the oak to the little dogwood when I saw something out of the corner of my eye. About the same time I heard it. I heard the crash and barely caught the sight of something running through the trees parallel to me. Now I say barely because it looked like a huge, man-high brown dog. Honestly, I thought buffalo instantly. How crazy is that? It crashed through the thicket, and I heard it hit the water. It sounded like a herd of hogs plowing through. I wrote it off as a deer that jumped. Me glimpsing it made it look different. Well, I thought about that sight, that feeling, all morning as I drove back home before hunting again. It was around 2 or so that afternoon. I was there walking back to my stand, still thinking about the oddness of the morning. It was only a quarter of a mile or so walk, and there I settled in quicker enough. Again, everything was oddly quiet. I had been sitting maybe an hour or so when I heard the faint splash of hogs I assumed. Across the thicket in the swamp, as it got louder, instead of all that excited, eager feeling you normally get, I was getting nervous, tense. It was so weird. I've never felt that way before. What I thought were a bunch of hogs turned to be one single critter. When it was within about 100 yards, I could hear it so plain and clear. Whatever it was in no hurry and stayed out of sight on my blind side across the thicket. I had scouted all this out and knew the water was waist deep on me at its shallowest. And this thing was picking its feet or legs clear of the water as it walked. So I could hear the splash, drip, 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 splash, drip, 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 as it put one foot in front of the other, real slow, like it was trying to be quiet. I thought it might be another person, so I thought about how deep that water was. I would never point a gun or at a noise or something I wasn't sure. Not planning to kill at least. But as that noise got louder, and I got to the edge of the thicket, I was looking down the barrel. Still unsafe, finger off the trigger, but still, you've got to know me to know how serious this must have been. I was actually shaking. Well, it got to the edge of the water, within about 40 yards of the thicket before the open ground. Between us, that was all that was left. It crashed through 10 to 15 yards and then went quiet. Deathly quiet. No sound, no frogs, no crickets, no birds, nothing. I might have imagined it, but I thought I could hear every now and then something was slipping in on me. It was getting dark, and to say I was shaken was to be an understatement. I never saw or heard anything else that evening, but I walked out backwards before dark. I was so put off by it. I'd forgotten my bag, hanging on a nail on the stand. I realized that while I was driving home. I told my granddaddy about it that night, and of course he made fun of me. But all that wasn't bad enough. Here's the crazy part. Most folks don't believe. It was 2 days later before I got the nerve to go back after my bag. I carried a shotgun this time and felt more secure with it. No doubt I could hit anything at this point. It was an old rabbit ear. I kept my thumb on the hammer the whole work in. And of course, I went midday and kept my eyes peeled. As I slipped towards my stand, like I said, I was on pretty open ground. Except the thicket, which could be on the other side of my stand from where I was coming in. I got about 35 yards or so from my stand and glanced up. It was gone. I don't remember seeing it piled on the ground below, but it was not on the tree. I could see white all around where it was, like the bark had been scratched and clawed all to hell. My bag was still hanging on that nail. I never looked back, and to this day, I've not been back to that swamp. A few years after my little incident, it was all clear cut. Part of the swamp was filled in, and there are houses there now. I still told some people about it, but usually it takes a few drinks.